Well, hello. This is Diagnosis and Beyond, and I'm your host, Angel Carson. I'm a brain tumor survivor, a mom, a speech language pathologist, and your host for today. So I'm taking you back 16 years. It's been 16 years since my brain surgery, and it started as a Bell palsy. It was in the beginning of summer, and I had just gotten back from a spring break trip with my daughter in New York City. And normally these tumors are found through seizure. And she was 9 years old, and she's leading me around the city. I planned everything before we went, but then it was my daughter who was leading us to the subway. We saw off-Broadway show, we saw on-Broadway show, we saw the Brooklyn Bridge on a boat tour, we went to the Statue of Liberty. I mean, we did it all in 3 days, 3 or 4 days. So that was a miracle that God didn't have it discovered through a seizure with my daughter and I in New York City. So we got back from New York City about a month and a half later, and I was having symptoms while I was making lemonade, and I gave myself an oral facial exam and determined that I was experiencing Bell palsy. So I got in my car, and as I'm driving, this eye stopped working. So I made sure I got myself to the ER. And it started with something that wasn't connected at all. A Bell palsy is not connected to a brain tumor. As an athlete with no other symptoms, I walked into the ER expecting answers with simple temporary management request from the doctors and nurses. Instead, the visit turned into 2 MRIs, one with contrast and one without. And then the discovery that would change my life, an astrocytoma tumor in my frontal lobe. I was 41. Within hours, I was sent to the trauma hospital where everything moved fast. I was given MRIs every 3 hours for the next 2 or 3 days. I was being interviewed by neurosurgeons based on where my tumor was. Those were the questions they were asking me. They were all trivia-like. For example, they were asking me math questions. They were asking me memory questions. And then they were asking me sequencing questions. Well, this is one of them that they asked me was, how many lakes are in Florida? Well, I couldn't answer that before. So it was kind of comical, some of them. But also, I didn't realize it at the time, but they were asking me those questions for a critical reason. Like, how much of me was at risk? Was it just in my frontal lobe, or had it spread to other areas? And then came the decision. I could watch it, I could biopsy it, or I could take the whole thing out. And I had already been getting lost. That was the major thing, of me getting lost. And I felt like it was the ADHD-like symptoms I was complaining to my doctor about. I was looking at all the other women that were doing the same things I was doing as a young mom with elementary school children. We were all pushing to our limits. So I didn't know how much of it was that and how much of it was, that I was really having some major issues. So it turned out that it was the major issues. Like, that's what it turned out to be. It wasn't just me having my own issues. I wasn't just the doctor said, just make a list, you need to be more organized. I was beating myself up over that. But anyway, so that's what they told me. But since I was having the symptoms, like I said, I decided just to have it removed completely. But I had 2 weeks to decide. But that gave me enough time to go to Shands to get a second opinion. Shands is a teaching hospital in Gainesville, which is 3 hours away from where I live. And while in Gainesville, I met with a renowned neurosurgeon who's done thousands of at least 1,000 of these operations. The neurosurgeon in the Orlando area had only done 200. So that discrepancy was important to me. But the glitch was they couldn't tell if it was cancer until they got it out. If it was cancer and I had the operation in Gainesville, I would be rehabbing in a hotel, and then I would have to stay there for the treatment. And they couldn't guarantee how long the treatment was going to take. So because my children were in elementary school, I had my son in 4th grade, my daughter in 3rd grade, and we had our church family, and we had our neighbors, and we had family here. So, we just decided to have the surgery here. It just made sense for the convenience of our family. So that's what we did. We stayed in Orlando, and we had the surgery here. I had to make the difficult but intentional decision to stay close to home, where family and network support, especially if the diagnosis turned out to be cancer. Looking back, the season of my life was filled with uncertainty, but also purpose. I was faced with life-altering decisions in a very short amount of time. And while medical expertise guided me, so did faith, family, and the importance of having support close by. Choosing where to receive care wasn't just a medical decision, it was a personal one. It was about being present for my children, leaning on my community, and trusting that I was exactly where I needed to be. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this part of my story, is that advocate for yourself, ask questions, and consider not just the treatment, but the environment in which you will heal. Because healing is not just physical, it's emotional, spiritual, and deeply personal. And sometimes what feels like an unexpected detour is actually divine direction. So remember, silence does not mean absence. And this phrase is going to be repeated because it's important. This has been The Diagnosis and Beyond, and I'm your host, Angel Carson. Hopefully you will listen to my other videos after this one, because I'm going to go into more about the surgery and take you into the ICU with me. Okay? But remember, you can get through anything. You are strong and resilient. Okay, I'm your host, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.